Jatinderpal Singh arrived in Canada with dreams that sparkled brighter than the northern lights he had only seen in photographs. Like thousands of other Indian students who land on Canadian soil each year, he carried within him the hopes of his entire family, the weight of their sacrifices, and the promise of a future built on education and honest work. His student visa was not just a document, it was a golden ticket. A pathway to opportunities that seemed impossible back in his hometown in Punjab. The initial months in Canada were filled with wonder and overwhelming challenges. Jatinderpal enrolled in a college program, attended classes diligently, and worked part-time jobs to support himself, as so many international students do. However, the cost of living in Canada proved far more expensive than he had anticipated. Tuition fees, rent, groceries, transportation, and the constant pressure to send money back home to his aging parents began to create cracks in his carefully constructed plans. What had seemed manageable on paper became a mountain of stress in reality. As time passed, Jatinderpal found himself caught in a vicious cycle of financial strain. His part-time earnings barely covered his rent and basic necessities, let alone his tuition fees. He began borrowing money from friends, then from acquaintances, and eventually from people he barely knew. The debt accumulated like snow in a Canadian winter, silent at first, but soon becoming impossible to ignore. Each month, the interest compounded, and the phone calls from creditors became more frequent, more aggressive, more threatening. Then came the blow that would change everything. His student visa expired. Perhaps he had been too overwhelmed to notice the date approaching. Or perhaps he had been too afraid to face the reality that he could not afford to renew his status or continue his studies. Without valid immigration status, Jatinderpal became one of the thousands of undocumented people living in the shadows of Canadian society. He could no longer work legally, could not access most services, and lived in constant fear of deportation. The desperation that comes with being undocumented, deeply in debt, and unable to see a way forward is something that many cannot fully comprehend unless they have experienced it themselves. Jatinderpal was now invisible to the system that had once welcomed him as a student. He could not ask for help from authorities, could not return home empty-handed, and face the disappointment of his family, and could not move forward legally. He was trapped in a liminal space, neither here nor there, belonging nowhere. It was during this darkest period that someone approached him with an offer. Criminal organizations, particularly those involved in drug trafficking, have long preyed upon vulnerable individuals, especially those who are undocumented, desperate, and isolated from support systems. These recruiters are skilled at identifying people like Jatinderpal, individuals who are educated enough to follow instructions, desperate enough to take risks, and isolated enough that their disappearance or arrest would not immediately raise alarms in any legitimate community. The offer probably seemed like a lifeline at first. Easy money, they would have told him. Just transport packages from one location to another, ask no questions, and earn enough in a few trips to clear his debts and maybe even restart his life. The criminal networks that operate drug trafficking operations across Canada are sophisticated enterprises. They use vulnerable people as couriers, drivers, and low-level distributors, knowing that these individuals will face the harshest consequences if caught, while the true organizers remain insulated and protected. Jatinderpal said yes. Perhaps he told himself it would be just once, or just until he cleared his debts. Perhaps he believed he could control when and how he would exit this world. Perhaps he did not fully understand the nature of what he was transporting. Or perhaps the weight of his circumstances had crushed his ability to see any other option. Whatever his reasoning, he crossed a line from which there would be no easy return. The drugs that Jatinderpal became involved in trafficking were not harmless substances. Canada, like many Western nations, is experiencing a devastating opioid crisis. Drugs like fentanyl, a synthetic opioid that is 50 times more potent than heroin and 100 times more potent than morphine, have killed thousands of Canadians. Each package that Jatinderpal transported potentially contributed to overdoses, shattered families, and lives destroyed by addiction. The ripple effects of drug trafficking extend far beyond the immediate transaction, poisoning entire communities. Law enforcement agencies across Canada have been working tirelessly to intercept drug trafficking networks. Through a combination of surveillance, informants, undercover operations, and data analysis, police eventually identified Jatinderpal as part of a larger network. When the arrest came, it likely came suddenly. Perhaps he was pulled over during a routine traffic stop and officers discovered drugs in his vehicle. Or perhaps investigators had been building a case against him for months. documenting his movements and transactions before moving in for the arrest. The Canadian justice system, while known for being more lenient than some other countries, takes drug trafficking extremely seriously. During his trial, the court would have heard about his circumstances, his immigration status, his debts, and perhaps even his initial good intentions when he came to Canada. However, the court would also have heard about the quantity of drugs involved, the harm those drugs cause to communities, and the fact that Jatinderpal made conscious choices to participate in criminal activity, despite knowing it was wrong. The judge sentenced Jatinderpal Singh to 11 years in prison. This lengthy sentence reflects the severity with which Canadian courts view drug trafficking, particularly when it involves dangerous substances like opioids. 11 years is a significant portion of a human life. Jatinderpal, who had come to Canada perhaps in his early 20s with dreams of education and success, would now spend his 20s and possibly his early 30s behind bars, marked forever as a convicted criminal. The tragedy of Jatinderpal's story extends beyond just one individual. His family back in India, who had invested their savings and hopes in his education abroad, now faces the shame and heartbreak of having a son in a Canadian prison. His story serves as a cautionary tale for the thousands of international students who arrive in Canada each year, many of whom face similar pressures and vulnerabilities. The desperation that comes from expired visas, mounting debts, and limited options creates a dangerous vulnerability that criminal organizations are all too eager to exploit. After serving his sentence, Jatinderpal will almost certainly face deportation back to India. He will return, not as the successful immigrant his family had hoped for, but as someone with a serious criminal record that will follow him for the rest of his life. The dreams that brought him to Canada will have transformed into a nightmare that cost him more than a decade of freedom, destroyed his future prospects, and caused immeasurable pain to everyone who cared about him. This story is not unique to Jatinderpal Singh alone. Across Canada, immigration lawyers, social workers, and community organizations see similar cases regularly. International students, temporary foreign workers, and others who fall through the cracks of the immigration system become vulnerable to exploitation and recruitment into criminal activities. The lesson here is not just about individual choices, but about the systemic vulnerabilities that exist when people become desperate, undocumented, and isolated. It is a reminder that behind every crime statistic is a human being who made choices, sometimes terrible choices, often in circumstances of profound desperation that most of us will hopefully never have to face. As we conclude this deeply troubling yet important story of Jatinderpal Singh, we are reminded that the journey to a new country is filled not only with opportunities but also with challenges that can sometimes overwhelm even the most well-intentioned individuals. His story serves as a powerful warning to all international students and newcomers about the critical importance of maintaining legal status, seeking help when facing financial difficulties, and understanding that short-term solutions offered by criminal networks will always lead to long-term devastation. If you found this story educational and eye-opening, please take a moment to like this video, as it helps us reach more people who need to hear these cautionary tales and understand the realities of immigration and life abroad. We at West is Best are committed to bringing you real stories, honest perspectives, and valuable information about life in Western countries, both the opportunities and the pitfalls. If you want to stay informed about immigration issues, student experiences, legal matters, and the realities that many face but few discuss openly, please subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell so you never miss our upcoming videos. Share this story with friends, family members, or anyone you know who is planning to study or move abroad, because awareness and knowledge can be the difference between success and tragedy. Thank you for watching, and remember, making informed decisions and seeking help when needed is always better than taking desperate measures that can destroy your entire future. Stay safe, stay legal, and stay connected with West is Best.